poor twin sisters, only 7 years old, sleep in a subway station every night. A lonely millionaire passes them every day until one detail breaks his heart. He discovers that they are waiting for a mother who has never returned and hasn't eaten for days. Without realizing it, that encounter changes his life forever, and theirs too. If this story interested you, subscribe to our channel, don't forget to like this video, and tell us which city you're watching us from. We'll keep going. New York City never truly slept. Even at 3 a.m., the Grand Central subway station pulsed, with the heartbeat of trains and the occasional footsteps of night shift workers. In the eastern corner of the station, tucked away on a fixed bench partially hidden by a decorative column, two identical little girls slept huddled together. Emma and Lily Thompson were mirror images of each other. Same golden hair, same button nose, same 7-year-old frame. But that's where the similarities ended. Emma, born just 4 minutes before her sister, carried the weight of the world on her small shoulders. Her eyes, even when closed in sleep, seemed tense, as if she couldn't fully surrender to rest. Her arm was always protectively wrapped around Lily, who slept more peacefully, her expression trusting and unburdened. This bench had been their home for the past 4 days. 4 days since their mother, Sarah, had kissed their foreheads and said, "Wait right here, sweethearts. Mommy's going to find us something to eat. I'll be right back." 4 days of Emma refusing to move more than 20 feet from that spot, fiercely committed to the promise that they would be right here when their mother returned. During the day, they blended into the background of the bustling station. New Yorkers rushed past, eyes forward, minds occupied with destinations, deadlines, and devices. The girls had become just another feature of urban scenery, as invisible as the cracks in the marble floor or the decades-old graffiti scratched into the bench's wooden slats. At precisely 7:43 a.m., as happened every weekday, a private subway car glided silently into a restricted section of the station. Its sleek, unmarked exterior contrasted sharply with the graffiti-covered public trains. The car belonged to Jonathan Matthews, founder and CEO of Ecosphere Technologies, a company revolutionizing sustainable energy across the country. Inside the custom-designed car, Jonathan sat alone, reviewing quarterly projections on his tablet. At 38, he embodied success by every conventional measure. His company was valued at $17 billion. His name appeared on Fortune's 40 Under 40 list 3 years running. His innovations in clean energy storage had earned him a reputation as the Edison of the Green Revolution. Yet Jonathan's eyes carried a familiar emptiness that no business success could fill. Abandoned as an infant and raised in 7 different foster homes before aging out of the system, he had built his empire as a fortress against the vulnerability of human connection. His Manhattan penthouse, spanning the entire top floor of a Soho high-rise, was a monument to minimalist design. All clean lines, neutral tones, and conspicuous absence of personal artifacts. His morning routine never varied. Wake at 5 a.m., 60-minute workout, protein smoothie, private subway to headquarters, 14-hour workday, return home, review reports, sleep for exactly 6 hours, repeat. Relationships were functional, calibrated for maximum efficiency and minimum emotional investment. Anything deeper represented an unacceptable risk to the control he had fought so desperately to establish. "Approaching Grand Central Station, sir," announced the driver through the intercom. Jonathan nodded absently, eyes still fixed on projections. The car slowed to a crawl as it passed through the public section of the station before entering the corporate tunnel that would take him directly to Ecosphere's underground entrance. It was during this brief passage through Grand Central that Jonathan first noticed them. 2 small figures huddled on a bench. Something about them caught his attention, though he couldn't say what. Perhaps it was the way the older one seemed to shield the younger, even in sleep. Or perhaps it was how out of place they looked. 2 islands of innocence in the cynical sea of New York City. For 3 seconds his eyes lingered on the girls, then the car entered the corporate tunnel, and Jonathan returned to his reports. The next morning his gaze found them again. This time, they were awake. The older girl, was carefully dividing a half-eaten muffin between them, giving the larger portion to her sister. The younger one was drawing patterns in the dust with her finger, her laughter silenced by the soundproof windows of Jonathan's private car. By the third day, he found himself looking for them, a momentary disruption in his perfectly synchronized schedule. They wore the same clothes each day. No adult ever seemed to accompany them. They never strayed far from that bench. "Stop the car," Jonathan suddenly instructed on the fourth morning, surprising even himself. "Sir?" The driver's voice carried a note of confusion. "Just for a moment, here." The car halted. Jonathan stared at the girls through the tinted window, his analytical mind calculating possibilities. Were they homeless? Where were their parents? Why did no one notice them? Why did he notice them? More importantly, why did he care? He pressed the intercom button. "Continue to headquarters." That night, for the first time in years, Jonathan Matthews's sleep was disturbed. He dreamed of a different bench, in a different state 30 years earlier. A 4-year-old boy sitting alone, clutching a worn backpack containing everything he owned, waiting for a mother who had promised to return. He remembered the social worker's pitying smile when she finally came, not his mother, but a stranger who would take him to yet another temporary home. "Mr. Matthews," his assistant's voice snapped him back to the present. He was standing in his office, staring out the floor-to-ceiling windows at the Manhattan skyline. How long had he been lost in thought? "The board meeting starts in 5 minutes, she reminded him, concern evident in her tone. Jonathan Matthews was never distracted. Jonathan Matthews was never late. "Cancel it," he heard himself say. "I'm sorry. Reschedule for tomorrow. Something urgent has come up." 40 minutes later, Jonathan stood in Grand Central Station, feeling distinctly out of place in his $3,000 suit. The girls were still there, the older one now reading a discarded newspaper to her sister, carefully sounding out the words. He approached slowly, not wanting to frighten them. The older girl noticed him immediately, her body tensing as she shifted to place herself between her sister and the stranger. "Hello," Jonathan said, keeping his distance. The older girl said nothing, her eyes wary and assessing. "I'm Jonathan." He tried again. "Are you hungry?" The younger girl peered around her sister. "I'm Lily," she offered brightly, earning a sharp look from her protector. "Don't talk to strangers, Lily," the older girl whispered, loud enough for Jonathan to hear. He nodded, respecting her caution. "That's good advice." He placed a paper bag on the edge of the bench, then stepped back. "Just some sandwiches and juice if you want them." The older girl didn't move, but Lily's eyes widened at the mention of food. "I've seen you here the past few days," Jonathan continued. "Do you need help?" "We're waiting for our mom," the older girl finally spoke, her voice stronger than her small frame suggested. "She's coming back for us." Jonathan felt something twist in his chest, recognition perhaps. "What's your name?" he asked gently. She hesitated, then lifted her chin slightly. "Emma." "Emma and Lily," Jonathan repeated. "How long have you been waiting?" 4 days, Lily chimed in before Emma could stop her. "But Mom said to stay right here, so we are." Jonathan nodded slowly, memories of his own childhood flooding back. The fierce hope that someone would return. The gradual, crushing realization that they wouldn't. "May I sit?" he asked, gesturing to the far end of the bench. Emma considered. This then nodded slightly, maintaining her protective position in front of Lily. As he sat down, keeping a respectful distance, Jonathan realized he had no plan. For the first time in decades, the man who calculated every business move 5 steps ahead was acting purely on instinct. What he didn't know then was that this moment, this simple, unremarkable interaction, would completely upend the carefully constructed life he had built, challenging everything he thought he knew about success, worth, and connection. And as Emma cautiously reached for the paper bag, her eyes never leaving his, neither of them could possibly imagine how their lives were about to change forever. For the next 3 days, Jonathan Matthews found himself drawn back to Grand Central Station at different times, before work, during his lunch break, after evening meetings. Each visit he brought something different. fresh clothes in approximately their size, children's books, a small medical kit to tend to the scrapes on Lily's knees, each offering carefully placed on the edge of the bench, each interaction brief, but increasingly significant. Emma's suspicions softened incrementally. She allowed Jonathan to sit closer, to speak directly to Lily, who bubbled with questions about his super shiny watch and fancy computer phone. But Emma never let her guard down completely. Her eyes constantly scanned the crowds, searching for their mother's face among the thousands passing through the station each day. "Why are you helping us?" Emma finally asked on the third day, her voice barely audible above the rumble of passing trains. Jonathan considered the question carefully. The truth was, he didn't fully understand his own motivations. "Sometimes," he said finally, "people just need someone to notice them." Emma nodded as if this made perfect sense. "Our mom's coming back," she asserted, though the conviction in her voice had begun to waver. "She promised." "I believe you," Jonathan replied, though the hollowness in his chest suggested otherwise. He recognized the patterns too well, the gradual transition from certainty to doubt, from hope to resignation. He had lived it himself. Back at Ecosphere headquarters, Jonathan's behavior was raising eyebrows. Richard Blackwood, the company's COO and second largest shareholder, watched with calculated interest as Jonathan postponed meetings, delegated critical decisions, and disappeared for hours without explanation. "Problems at home, Jonathan?" Richard asked with artificial concern during an executive meeting, knowing full well that Jonathan Matthews had no home in the traditional sense, only real estate investments and a sterile penthouse. "Nothing I can't handle," Jonathan replied, coolly, unwilling to give Richard the satisfaction of elaborating. Their relationship had always been complicated, though they presented a united front to the board and investors. Beneath the surface lurked a long-standing power struggle. Richard, 15 years Jonathan's senior, had never fully accepted being second in command to someone he considered a lucky upstart. That evening, Jonathan sat in his private car, scrolling through child welfare resources on his tablet. The situation with the girls couldn't continue indefinitely. They needed proper care, stable housing, and though he was reluctant to admit it, they needed to prepare for the possibility that their mother wasn't returning. As the car slowed for its customary passage through Grand Central, Jonathan looked up, expecting to see the girls on their bench. Instead, he saw Emma standing, her small body rigid with tension as she argued with a transit police officer. Lily clung to her sister, tears streaming down her face. Without hesitation, Jonathan pressed the emergency stop button and exited the car, ignoring his driver's startled protest. "What seems to be the problem here?" he asked, approaching the officer with the calm authority that had become his trademark in boardrooms across the country. The officer turned, taking in Jonathan's expensive suit and commanding presence. "Sir, this is official transit authority. Business, I'm going to have to ask you to step back." "These children are under my care," Jonathan stated firmly, surprising himself with the certainty in his voice. Emma's eyes widened, but she said nothing. "You're their guardian?" the officer asked skeptically. "Yes," Jonathan answered without hesitation. "There's been a misunderstanding. I was delayed in a meeting and couldn't meet them at our usual time." The officer looked doubtful. "They've been here for days, according to reports, sleeping on this bench." Jonathan maintained his composure, though his heart raced. "A regrettable situation that's being rectified immediately. I take full responsibility." After several tense minutes, and the discreet display of a business card that carried enough influence to make the officer reconsider his position, Jonathan found himself walking toward the station exit, with two silent children following closely behind. "You lied," Emma said quietly once they were outside, the evening air cool against their faces. "I did," Jonathan acknowledged, kneeling to meet her eyes. "But that officer was going to take you somewhere you didn't want to go." "To find our mum?" Lily asked hopefully. Jonathan felt a pang in his chest. "Probably not right away," he said gently. "More likely to a temporary shelter while they tried to locate her." Emma's face hardened with understanding beyond her years. They'd separate us. Foster homes never take two kids together. The certainty in her voice told Jonathan this wasn't theoretical knowledge. These children had experience with the system. "I have an apartment nearby," he offered cautiously, "just until we figure things out. You'd have proper beds, food, safety." Seeing Emma's hesitation, he added, "And you'd be together." Emma studied, his face intently, as if searching for hidden motives. Finally, she looked at Lily, who was swaying slightly with exhaustion, and made her decision. "Just for tonight," she agreed, "and then we come back here tomorrow to wait." The ride to Soho, in Jonathan's private car, was silent. Lily fell asleep almost immediately, her head resting against Emma's shoulder. Emma remained vigilant, taking in every detail of their journey as if memorizing an escape route. Jonathan's penthouse occupied the entire top floor of an exclusive building, accessible only by a private elevator that required both a key card and biometric confirmation. As the elevator doors opened directly into the apartment's foyer, Emma's eyes widened despite her determination to appear unimpressed. The space was immense, over 6,000 square feet of minimalist luxury. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of Manhattan. The furniture was sparse but exquisitely crafted, each piece selected for both aesthetic value and functionality. There were no family photos, no mementos, no evidence that the space was anything more than a high-end hotel suite. "Are you rich?" Lily asked bluntly, now awake and staring at the enormous aquarium that separated the living area from the dining room. "Lily," Emma scolded. "It's all right," Jonathan assured her. "Yes, Lily, I suppose I am." "Then why do you look so sad?" the younger twin asked, displaying the unfiltered honesty unique to children. Jonathan blinked, caught off guard by the question. Before he could formulate a response, his phone rang, Richard Blackwood's name flashing on the screen. He silenced it without answering. "Let me show you where you can sleep," he said instead, leading them down a hallway to one of the guest rooms. The room, like the rest of the apartment, was impeccably designed but devoid of personal touches. The king-sized bed looked absurdly large for two small children. "Bathroom's through there," Jonathan pointed. "There are new toothbrushes in the drawer. I'll find you something to sleep in." When he returned with two of his t-shirts, the smallest he could find, though they would still swallow the girls' tiny frames, he found Emma examining the room's locks. "There's no way to lock it from inside," she noted, her voice neutral, but her implication clear. "The building has state-of-the-art security," Jonathan explained. "No one can access this floor without authorization." "I meant from you," Emma clarified, her directness jarring. Jonathan felt a complex mixture of emotions, respect for her protective instinct, sadness that she felt such caution necessary, and a surprising hurt that she would think him capable of harm. "I understand your concern," he said carefully. "I'll sleep in the room at the opposite end of the hallway, and I promise I won't enter without knocking and getting your permission first." Emma nodded, apparently satisfied with this arrangement. After showing them how to use the shower controls and ordering dinner from a nearby restaurant that specialized in comfort food, Jonathan retreated to his home office. The events of the day had unfolded with such rapidity that he hadn't fully processed the implications of his actions. He had just taken two undocumented children into his home, lied to a transit officer, and effectively removed them from the location where they were waiting for their parent. The potential legal ramifications alone were staggering. Yet beneath the practical concerns lurked something deeper, a recognition that he was now responsible for these children, however temporarily. The realization was both terrifying and strangely exhilarating. Later, after making sure the girls had eaten and settled in for the night, Jonathan stood at the window of his living room, Manhattan spread out before him like a constellation of earthbound stars. His phone vibrated again. More missed calls from Richard, urgent messages from his assistant, a reminder about tomorrow's investor meeting. For the first time in his adult life, Jonathan Matthews let the demands of his empire fade into the background. His thoughts instead were occupied by two small figures sleeping down the hall, particularly the fierce protectiveness in Emma's eyes when she looked at her sister. What would it be like, he wondered, to care about someone that deeply, to put another's needs so completely before your own? As he turned from the window, Jonathan caught his reflection in the glass, a successful man by every external measure, yet fundamentally alone. The penthouse that had always felt appropriately spacious now seemed cavernous in its emptiness. Something was shifting within him, like tectonic plates realigning. He didn't yet understand what it meant or where it would lead, but as he made his way to his bedroom, he knew, with absolute certainty, that his life would never be quite the same again. Jonathan woke at precisely 5 a.m., as he had every day for the past 15 years. His hand moved automatically to silence his alarm before it completed its first chime. For a disorienting moment, everything felt normal. The ambient glow of the city lights through his bedroom windows, the gentle hum of the climate control system, the weight of responsibilities waiting to be shouldered. Then he remembered 2 children were sleeping in his guest room. The realization propelled him out of bed with uncharacteristic urgency. Moving silently through the penthouse, he paused outside their door, listening. Nothing but deep, even breathing. He continued to the kitchen, his mind racing through the day's logistics. The girls needed to return to Grand Central. He had promised Emma they would. But the practical part of his brain recognized the futility of their vigil. 7 days had passed since their mother left them. The statistical probability of her return diminished with each passing hour. He was halfway through brewing coffee when a small voice startled him. "Your refrigerator is almost empty," Lily observed, standing in the kitchen doorway. Her hair was tousled from sleep, Jonathan's t-shirt hanging past her knees like a nightgown. "Don't you eat breakfast?" Jonathan blinked, recalibrating. "Good morning, Lily. I usually have a protein shake delivered with my lunch." Lily wrinkled her nose. "That's not breakfast. Emma makes us eat breakfast every day. She says it's the most important meal." "Emma's right," Jonathan agreed, noticing the older twin approaching cautiously behind her sister. "We need to go back to the station," Emma stated without preamble, her young face set with determination. "Mom might be there already, wondering where we are." Jonathan nodded, respecting her position even as his chest tightened with the knowledge of what likely awaited them. "After breakfast," he said, "there's a cafe downstairs. They make excellent pancakes." 2 hours later, the 3 of them sat on the familiar bench at Grand Central. Jonathan had arranged for his morning meetings to be handled by his executive team, earning him another suspicious text from Richard. "Second day of absences. Board members asking questions need explanation by noon." He ignored it, focusing instead on Emma's increasingly tense posture as morning turned to afternoon with no sign of Sarah Thompson. "Mom said this exact spot," Emma insisted, when Jonathan gently suggested they might try looking elsewhere. "She said not to move no matter what." "And you've done exactly as she asked," Jonathan assured her. "You've been so brave, Emma. Both of you have." Lily leaned against her sister, fatigue evident in her slumped shoulders. "Maybe she got lost," she suggested. "New York is really big." Emma said nothing, but Jonathan saw the doubt creeping into her eyes, the first cracks in her wall of certainty. His phone vibrated again. This time it wasn't Richard, but his personal assistant with an urgent weather alert. "Severe storm. Warning issued for NYC. Hurricane-force winds expected by evening. All non-essential personnel advised to evacuate Manhattan." As if on cue, a voice crackled over the station's PA system. "Attention all passengers. Due to the approaching tropical storm system, Grand Central Terminal will begin emergency closure. Procedures at 2 p.m. All commuters are advised to complete their travel immediately or seek alternative shelter. This is not a drill." Around them, the station's atmosphere shifted palpably as announcements repeated in multiple languages. Transit workers appeared, directing people toward exits. Maintenance crews began securing equipment and closing off sections of the terminal. "We have to go," Jonathan told the girls, rising to his feet. "The station is closing." "No!" Emma's response was immediate and vehement. "We can't leave. Mom won't know where to find us." "Emma," Jonathan knelt to her level, his voice gentle but firm. "A very dangerous storm is coming. The entire station is being evacuated. No one will be allowed to stay, not even us." But Mom, Emma's voice cracked, the first real vulnerability Jonathan had seen her display. "We'll leave a note," he suggested, pulling a business card and pen from his jacket pocket. "We'll tell her exactly where we are and how to reach us." Emma stared at the card in his hand, conflict evident in her expression. Finally, she nodded, dictating a message for Jonathan to write on the back of his card. "Mom, we had to leave because of the storm. We're staying with Mr. Jonathan. His phone number is here. Please call. We miss you. Love, Emma and Lily." Jonathan added his personal cell number, then placed the card carefully in a plastic sleeve from his wallet and secured it to the bench with strong tape provided by a sympathetic station agent. Outside, the sky had darkened prematurely, heavy, clouds hanging low over the city, wind whipped between buildings, sending debris skittering across streets. The first fat raindrops began to fall as Jonathan ushered the girls into his waiting car. "Take us home," he instructed the driver, then immediately corrected himself. "To my apartment." By the time they reached Soho, the storm had intensified dramatically. The building's doorman helped them inside, shouting over the wind that the management was advising all residents to prepare for potential power outages. In the penthouse, Jonathan moved with efficient purpose, checking emergency supplies and securing balcony furniture while the girls watched wide-eyed from the safety of the living room. "Is it a hurricane?" Lily asked, pressing her face against the window as rain lashed the glass in horizontal sheets. "A tropical storm," Jonathan corrected, "but it's strong enough that we need to stay away from the windows." He gently guided her back. "How about we find something to do in the center of the apartment?" For a man with no children in his life, Jonathan's penthouse was remarkably ill-equipped for entertaining young girls during a storm. After searching through closets and storage rooms, he managed to unearth an ancient chess set, a corporate gift he'd never used, and a tablet loaded with business applications but capable of accessing streaming services. As wind howled around the building's upper floors, the three of them sat on the living room floor, Jonathan patiently teaching the twins the basics of chess. Lily lost interest quickly, preferring to draw on the notepad Jonathan provided, but Emma revealed a natural aptitude for strategy that impressed him. "Check," she announced during their third game, her serious face betraying a hint of pride as she cornered his king. "Well played," Jonathan acknowledged, studying the board with genuine appreciation for her tactical thinking. The lights flickered once, twice, then stabilized as the building's backup generators engaged. Outside, the storm reached its full fury, transforming familiar city sounds into an otherworldly cacophony. "I'm scared," Lily admitted, as a particularly violent gust rattled the windows. Before Jonathan could respond, Emma moved to sit beside her sister, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "Remember what Mum always says, count to 10 and name 5 things you can see." Lily nodded, beginning the counting ritual while Emma provided reassuring commentary. 1, 2, 3. Jonathan watched their interaction with a tightness in his throat. Despite their circumstances, despite everything they had endured, the bond between these sisters remained unbreakable. Emma, only 7 years old herself, had somehow become both sister and mother to Lily, carrying responsibilities no child should bear. The storm raged throughout the evening. Jonathan ordered delivery from a restaurant willing to brave the weather, tipping the drenched delivery person generously. As they ate, the conversation flowed more easily than before, the shared experience of the storm creating an unexpected intimacy. "Where are your parents?" Lily asked suddenly between bites of pasta. Jonathan paused, fork suspended halfway to his mouth. "I don't have parents," he answered honestly. "Everyone has parents," Emma corrected matter-of-factly. "You might not know them, but you have them." "You're right," Jonathan acknowledged. "I meant that I grew up without them. Like you, I was in foster care." This revelation changed something in Emma's expression, a subtle shift from wariness to cautious recognition. "Did your mom leave you at a station too?" Lily asked, earning another scolding look from Emma. "Not exactly," Jonathan answered carefully, uncertain how much to share but sensing the importance of honesty. "I was very young, just a baby. I don't remember being left, only growing." up in different homes. Were they nice homes? Emma's question carried layers of meaning. Jonathan considered his response. Some were, others weren't. But I survived. We've been in 3 foster homes, Emma offered unexpectedly, the first personal information she had voluntarily shared, before Mom got us back. Jonathan nodded, understanding the significance of this disclosure. Was that recently? Last year, Emma confirmed. Mom promised we'd never be separated again. Her voice faltered slightly. She promised. Outside, thunder cracked directly overhead, making all 3 of them jump. The lights flickered again and went out completely. Emergency lighting activated seconds later, bathing the apartment in a soft amber glow. I think it's time for bed, Jonathan suggested, noting Lily's drooping eyelids. The storm should pass by morning. Getting the girls settled became a more complicated procedure in the dim emergency lighting. Jonathan found flashlights, demonstrated how to use the emergency bathroom lighting, and reassured them that the building was designed to withstand much worse storms than this one. What if Mom comes looking for us tonight? Emma asked as he prepared to leave their room. I've left instructions with building security, Jonathan assured her. If anyone asks for you, they'll contact me immediately, day or night. Emma nodded, seemingly satisfied with this arrangement. As Jonathan turned to go, her small voice stopped him once more. Thank you, she said simply, for not separating us. Those 4 words hit Jonathan with unexpected force. In his decades of business success, he had received countless accolades, awards, and expressions of gratitude from shareholders and beneficiaries of his charitable foundation. None had affected him as deeply as this child's simple acknowledgement. I promise I never will, he replied, the words emerging before he could analyze their implications. Later, unable to sleep despite the exhaustion weighing on him, Jonathan sat in his home office, the emergency lighting casting long shadows across the room. His phone, now at critical battery level, displayed dozens of missed calls and messages, from Richard, from board members, from his executive team. The quarterly investor call had proceeded without him for the first time in the company's history. Yet, as he set the phone aside, these professional crises seemed strangely distant, as if belonging to another life or another person. Instead, his thoughts remained fixed on Emma's words and the promise he had made in return. He had built his entire existence around avoiding precisely this kind of emotional entanglement. Attachments meant vulnerability, and vulnerability led to pain. Lessons learned through bitter childhood experience. His wealth, his company, his carefully controlled environment, all were sophisticated barriers constructed to protect himself from the messiness of human connection. Now, in the span of days, 2 small children had somehow bypassed every defense. As the storm gradually subsided in the early morning hours, Jonathan Matthews faced the most unsettling realization of his adult life. Somewhere between Grand Central Station and this moment, he had begun to care deeply about what happened to Emma and Lily Thompson, and that caring, that investment in their well-being, represented the greatest risk he had ever taken. The storm left New York City reeling. Flooded subway tunnels, downed power lines, and debris-strewn streets paralyzed the metropolis for days. Grand Central remained closed for emergency repairs. The damage to its eastern wing, where the girls' bench was located, particularly severe. This forced postponement of Emma's daily vigil created an unexpected opportunity. The temporary arrangement at Jonathan's penthouse extended from 1 night to 3, then to a week as the city slowly recovered. During this time, a subtle transformation took place, not just in the physical space, but in the emotional landscape they shared. Jonathan's pristine penthouse began showing signs of actual habitation. Colorful drawings adorned the refrigerator door. A collection of children's books appeared on the previously empty coffee table. Throw pillows migrated to the floor to form reading nests. Small sneakers stood in the entryway beside Jonathan's. Polished dress shoes, a visual juxtaposition that struck him each morning with its strange rightness. "Mr. Edwards is here, sir," Jonathan's assistant announced over the intercom one afternoon, 10 days after the girls had first come to stay. Jonathan looked up from the puzzle he was helping Lily complete. "Send him to my office, please. I'll be right there." Emma, who had been reading nearby, watched him with quiet attentiveness. Though she had gradually relaxed in his presence, her natural wariness never completely disappeared. She observed everything, processed information with remarkable perception, and remained Lily's constant protector. "Who's Mr. Edwards?" she asked as Jonathan stood. "A private investigator," Jonathan answered honestly. He had decided early on that transparency with Emma, appropriate to her age but never condescending, was the only approach that would earn her trust. "He's helping me look for your mother." Emma's expression tightened. "To make us go back to her?" The question caught Jonathan off guard. "I thought that's what you wanted." Emma looked down at her hands. "Lily does." Before Jonathan could pursue this revealing statement, Lily bounded over from the puzzle table. "Can we meet the investigator too? Maybe we can help him find Mom." The investigator, Martin Edwards, had the weathered face of a man who had seen the darker corners of humanity but hadn't lost his fundamental compassion. In his 30-year career, first as a police detective and later as a private investigator, he had specialized in missing persons cases. "The girls can wait in the living." "Sarum," Jonathan suggested, but Edwards shook his head. "Actually, I'd like to speak with them if that's all right. Children often remember details adults wouldn't think to mention." Emma sat perfectly straight in the office chair, her small legs dangling above the floor. Lily perched beside her, fidgeting with the hem of her new dress, one of several outfits Jonathan had ordered when it became clear they would be staying longer than initially planned. "I understand your mum's name is Sarah Thompson," Edwards began gently. "Can you tell me about her? What does she look like?" "She's pretty," Lily offered immediately. "She has yellow hair like us, but shorter, and green eyes, and she smells like lemons because of her work soap." "Her work soap?" Edwards prompted. "Mom cleans houses," Emma explained. "Rich people's houses. She brings home the little soaps sometimes from the hotels." Jonathan felt a pang at this casual revelation of their economic circumstances. "Do you know which houses she cleaned, or the company she worked for?" Edwards asked. Both girls shook their heads. "She always said not to tell people our business," Emma added, "because of the foster care people." Edwards nodded understandingly. "What about friends? Did your mum have friends she visited or talked about?" The questions continued for nearly an hour. Through patient conversation, Edwards pieced together a fragmentary picture of Sarah Thompson, a single mother, approximately 26 years old, who worked irregular hours cleaning houses and occasionally at night jobs the girls couldn't identify. They had moved frequently, staying in small apartments, extended stay motels, and occasionally with people the girls knew only by first names. When the twins left to have lunch, Edwards turned to Jonathan with a grave expression. "This won't be easy," he said bluntly. "Based on what they've described, their mother was living almost entirely off the grid. No fixed address, cash employment, avoiding institutional contact. People who live this way are extremely difficult to track." "But not impossible," Jonathan pressed. Edwards sighed. "Not impossible, but the lack of digital footprint complicates things significantly. No credit cards, no social media, apparently no consistent phone. The girls mentioned she had a payphone, likely a prepaid cell with minimal service." "What about the foster care connection? There must be records there." "That's our best lead," Edwards agreed. "But accessing those records requires legal authority we don't currently have. Without guardianship of the children, you have no standing to request that information." Jonathan leaned back in his chair, processing this. "What are you saying exactly?" "I'm saying that if Sarah Thompson doesn't want to be found, and if she's been practicing this level of invisibility for years, our chances are—" Edwards hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "Limited, especially without official channels." "Money is no object," Jonathan stated firmly. "Whatever resources you need." Edwards nodded, but his expression remained doubtful. "I'll do everything possible, but—" "Mr. Matthews, I feel obligated to ask, what's your end game here?" "End game? If we find her, what then? Return the girls to a woman who abandoned them in a subway station? And if we don't find her, have you considered what happens to Emma and Lily?" Jonathan had been avoiding this exact question, focusing, instead on the immediate challenges of caring for the girls and maintaining some semblance of his previous professional life. Now forced to confront it directly, he found himself without a prepared answer. "I don't know," he admitted, "but they deserve answers. They deserve to know what happened to their mother, whether she's coming back." After Edwards left, Jonathan stood at his office window, looking out at the city that had begun to recover from the storm. Crews worked on damaged buildings, traffic flowed around obstacles, people adapted and continued, the resilience of New York on full display. He thought about Emma's earlier response. "Lily does." Those two words suggested a complex emotional reality that the 7-year-old was still processing. The possibility that their mother's return might not be the outcome she now hoped for. "Mr. Jonathan?" Lily's voice pulled him from his thoughts. She stood in the doorway, holding a drawing. "I made this for your office. It's too boring in here." The drawing depicted 4 figures standing in front of what appeared to be a large building. 2 small blonde figures held hands in the center, flanked by a tall figure in a suit on one side and a woman with short yellow hair on the other. "This is us," Lily explained, pointing to each figure. "Me and Emma, you and Mom when she comes back." Jonathan felt his throat tighten. "It's beautiful, Lily. Thank you." "Emma says Mum might not come back," Lily continued matter-of-factly, her finger tracing the outline of the maternal figure. "But I think she will. She always comes back eventually." "Eventually?" Jonathan questioned gently. Lily nodded. "Sometimes she goes away for work. Once it was for 3 whole days, but she always comes back with presents and says she's sorry. She had to go." Jonathan carefully affixed the drawing to his otherwise pristine office wall. "This is perfect right here," he told her. "Now my office isn't boring anymore." Later that evening, after the girls had gone to bed, Jonathan received a preliminary report from Edwards. The investigation had yielded minimal results. Sarah Thompson had no driver's license in New York State, no registered vehicles, no property records, no tax filings in the past 5 years. Her last documented address was a women's shelter 3 years earlier. The only concrete lead was a possible employment record with a now-defunct cleaning service that had closed 2 years ago after its owner passed away. As the days passed, Jonathan established a new routine centered around the girls' needs, while attempting to maintain his corporate responsibilities remotely. He arranged for a tutor to assess their educational levels, discovering that while both were bright, they had significant gaps in their formal education due to frequent moves and irregular school attendance. Emma demonstrated remarkable aptitude for mathematics and strategic thinking. Lily showed creative talents in storytelling and art. Both absorbed new information with the hungry efficiency of children who had learned that knowledge was one thing that couldn't be taken from them. The most significant change, however, was in Jonathan himself. The man who had built his life around rigid schedules and emotional distance now found himself reading bedtime stories, mediating sister squabbles, and keeping mental notes of food preferences and clothing sizes. When Lily woke with nightmares, he learned to make warm milk with honey. When Emma grew quiet and withdrawn, he discovered that chess matches often opened pathways to conversation. 2 weeks after the storm, Edwards requested an urgent meeting. "I've exhausted every conventional avenue," he reported, spreading documents across Jonathan's desk. "But I did find something unusual. There was a Sarah Thompson who entered the foster system at age 14 in Pennsylvania. She aged out at 18 and disappeared from the system. The timing would match with her approximate age now." "And?" Jonathan prompted. "She was pregnant when she left state care with twins." Jonathan felt a chill. "The girls?" Edwards nodded. "Almost certainly. But here's where it gets complicated. This Sarah Thompson, if she's the same woman, has been essentially invisible to the system since then. No welfare benefits, no medical records, nothing. It's as if she deliberately stepped off the grid the moment she gained legal independence." "Why? Would someone do that?" "Fear, usually," Edwards answered. "People who grow up in the system often develop a profound distrust of authorities. Add the vulnerability of being a teenage mother with no support network. She may have believed staying invisible was the only way to keep her children." "Keep them from what?" Jonathan asked. From the same system she experienced, Edwards said simply. Having the girls moved from home to home, possibly separated, many former foster children vow their own kids will never experience what they did. The irony wasn't lost on Jonathan. Sarah Thompson had spent years keeping her daughters invisible to protect them from the system, only to ultimately leave them in circumstances that guaranteed system intervention. There's one more thing, Edwards added, pulling out a final document. A police report filed 3 weeks ago. A cleaning woman matching Sarah's description was found unconscious in a vacant apartment she was servicing. Apparent drug overdose. No identification was found, and she was taken to Metropolitan Hospital. Jonathan felt his chest constrict. And she recovered and left against medical advice the next day. The date matches 1 day before the girls say she left them at the station. The implications hung heavily in the office air. A desperate woman, possibly still suffering effects from an overdose, leaving her children somewhere she believed was safe while she... what? Sought help? More drugs? Simply couldn't cope anymore. I want to see the hospital security footage, Jonathan decided. And I want the girl's DNA compared to any samples the hospital might have preserved. That would require legal authority, Edwards began. Make it happen, Jonathan interrupted, his tone brooking no argument. Whatever it costs, whatever connections need to be leveraged, these girls deserve to know the truth. After Edwards left, Jonathan remained at his desk, processing the information. If Sarah Thompson had indeed suffered an overdose, then left her daughters while still in a compromised state, the possibilities were too numerous and too grim to contemplate fully. The sound of soft footsteps pulled him from these dark thoughts. Emma stood in the doorway, her expression making it clear she had overheard at least part of the conversation. "Mom's not coming back, is she?" she asked, her voice steady despite the pain evident in her eyes. Jonathan crossed the room and knelt before her. "I don't know yet," he answered honestly, "but Mr. Edwards is doing everything possible to find her." Emma nodded, absorbing this with the same quiet dignity she brought to all difficulties. "If she doesn't come back, what happens? To us?" It was the question Jonathan had been avoiding, the one Edwards had forced him to consider. Now looking into Emma's trusting eyes, he found there was only one possible answer. "You stay with me," he said simply, "for as long as you need to." Emma studied his face with that penetrating gaze that seemed far older than her 7 years. "Do you promise?" she asked finally. "I promise," Jonathan replied, the words cementing something fundamental within him, a commitment that transcended legal documents or social obligations, a promise from the heart. Later that night, checking on the girls, before he retired, Jonathan found them both asleep in the same bed despite having separate rooms available. Emma's arm was protectively draped over her sister, their breathing synchronized in sleep as it had been on that bench at Grand Central. Standing in the doorway, Jonathan Matthews, billionaire, CEO, master of corporate strategy, realized that he was utterly, completely unprepared for the challenge before him. Yet for the first time in his adult life, he felt anchored to something more meaningful than success or achievement. These children needed him, and in ways he was only beginning to understand, he needed them just as much. The first signs of trouble appeared 3 weeks after the girls moved into Jonathan's penthouse. It began with whispers in the elevator, conversations that abruptly ceased when he entered, sidelong glances from neighbors who had previously paid him no attention. The Montgomery woman from the 14th floor was asking about the children again. Jonathan's housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, informed him one morning as she organized the girls' newly purchased clothes. "Very nosy questions. When I said they were your nieces visiting, she just smiled like she knew better." Eleanor Montgomery was the building's self-appointed social guardian, a 72-year-old widow whose late husband's fortune allowed her to dedicate her considerable energy to monitoring the moral character of her neighbors. In the 5 years Jonathan had owned his penthouse, they had exchanged perhaps 20 words total. Now suddenly she seemed acutely interested in his affairs. "I'll handle Mrs. Montgomery," Jonathan assured Mrs. Chen. Please let me know if she bothers you again." The girls were adapting well to their new environment. Emma had begun working with a private tutor who marveled at her analytical abilities. Lily flourished in the art classes Jonathan arranged, her natural creativity blossoming with proper encouragement and materials. Both girls were gaining weight, their formerly thin faces filling out, their eyes brighter. Only at night did the lingering effects of their abandonment surface in Lily's frequent nightmares and Emma's insistence on sleeping beside her sister despite having her own room. Jonathan learned to listen for the telltale sounds of distress and had become adept at midnight comfort routines. Warm milk, soft lighting, gentle reassurance that they were safe. He was returning from one such midnight mission when his phone vibrated with a text from Richard Blackwood. "Emergency board meeting called for tomorrow 9 a.m. Your absence not an option this time." Jonathan frowned. As CEO and majority shareholder, he should have been the one calling emergency meetings. That Richard had done so without consultation signaled a serious power play. "I'll need to go into the office tomorrow," he told the girls over breakfast. "Mrs. Chen will stay with you and I've arranged for your tutor to come for extra hours." "Because of the board meeting?" Emma asked, surprising him. "How did you know about that?" Emma shrugged. "I heard you talking on the phone last night. The man sounded angry." Jonathan smiled ruefully. Nothing escaped Emma's notice. "Yes, it's an important meeting, but I'll be back for dinner, I promise." "Can we come see where you work sometime?" Lily asked, carefully spreading jam on her toast with the precise concentration of a child still mastering fine motor skills. "I'd like that," Jonathan replied, realizing with surprise that he meant it. The thought of the girls visiting Ecosphere headquarters, walking through the building that had been the center of his universe for so long, felt unexpectedly right. The atmosphere in the Ecosphere boardroom the next morning was frigid, despite the summer heat outside. Richard Blackwood sat at the far end of the table, symbolically opposite Jonathan's usual position, flanked by 3 board members known to be his strongest allies. "Jonathan," Richard greeted him with artificial warmth, "so glad you could join us. We were beginning to forget what you looked like." Jonathan took his seat without acknowledging the barb. "I understand you called this emergency meeting, Richard. I'm curious what constitutes an emergency when our Q2 numbers are exceeding projections by 17%. Richard's smile tightened. "The emergency, Jonathan, is one of leadership, or rather its absence. For the past month, you've been increasingly disengaged from day-to-day operations. You've missed critical investor calls, delegated key decisions to subordinates, and been physically absent from headquarters for unprecedented periods. And yet," Jonathan countered smoothly, "the company continues to thrive. Perhaps this demonstrates the strength of the executive team we've built together. Or perhaps," Richard shot back, "it demonstrates that your presence is no longer as essential as you'd like to believe." The implication hung in the air, heavy and threatening. Jonathan surveyed the faces around the table, reading the dynamics with the practiced eye of a man who had navigated corporate politics for decades. Most appeared uncomfortable, but curious. Only Richard's closest allies showed open hostility. "I've been managing some personal matters," Jonathan acknowledged. "Matters that required my immediate attention but are now stabilizing. My commitment to Ecosphere remains absolute." "Personal matters," Richard repeated skeptically. "Yes, we've heard rumors about these personal matters. 2 young children, I believe, suddenly appearing in your life without explanation." Jonathan felt a cold spike of anger. "My private life is not subject to board scrutiny, Richard." "It is when it affects company performance," Richard countered. "It is when the CEO of a publicly traded company worth billions suddenly begins behaving erratically. It is when newspapers start asking questions." "Newspapers?" Jonathan's voice remained steady, but internal alarms blared. Richard slid a tablet across the table. On its screen was a gossip column from one of New York's more sensationalist publications. "Tech billionaire's mysterious children, sources close to Ecosphere. CEO Jonathan Matthews report the notorious bachelor has secretly taken in 2 young girls of unknown origin." The reclusive billionaire, known for avoiding personal entanglements, has been spotted with the children at various Manhattan locations. One insider questions, why would a man with no family suddenly take in 2 street children? What's his real motivation? Representatives for Matthews declined to comment. Jonathan felt his pulse quicken but maintained his composure. Tabloid. Gossip is hardly worthy of an emergency board meeting. This is just the beginning, Richard warned. The Journal called this morning. They're preparing a more substantive piece, questioning your recent leadership decisions in light of these distractions. Another board member, Janet Harris, spoke up. Jonathan, we're concerned not just about the publicity but about your well-being. Taking in children is a massive life change. Are you certain this is appropriate? The careful choice of word, appropriate rather than wise or sensible, revealed the underlying implication. Jonathan felt his anger deepen. I appreciate the concern, he replied with measured control. But let me be perfectly clear. My personal decisions are not subject to board approval. My professional performance remains exceptional, as our numbers demonstrate, and any insinuation regarding my motivations with these children is not only offensive, but potentially actionable. The threat of legal consequences hung in the air. Several board members shifted uncomfortably. No one is insinuating anything improper, Richard backpedaled slightly. We're simply concerned about your focus. Ecosphere is at a crucial juncture with the European expansion and the Singapore merger. We need our CEO fully present. And you have him, Jonathan stated firmly. Now, if there's actual company business to discuss, I suggest we move to it. Otherwise, this meeting is adjourned. After a tense 2 hours covering legitimate business matters, Jonathan returned to his office to find 3 messages from Edwards. The investigator had made significant progress. Hospital records confirmed that an unidentified woman matching Sarah Thompson's description had indeed been treated for an overdose. She had left against medical advice approximately 24 hours before the girls were left at Grand Central. More significantly, Edwards had located a former co-worker from the cleaning service who remembered Sarah. According to this source, Sarah had struggled with addiction for years, but had been clean since regaining custody of her daughters. The relapse, if that's what occurred, represented a departure from recent behavior. Sir, Jonathan's assistant interrupted his reading. Mrs. Montgomery from your building is here. She's quite insistent about seeing you. Jonathan sighed. Send her in. Eleanor Montgomery entered his office with the confident bearing of someone accustomed to social deference. Her designer suit and impeccable coiffure projected old-money elegance, but her eyes held the sharp calculation of a seasoned social operator. Mr. Matthews, she began without preamble, I believe we need to discuss the children currently residing in your home. Mrs. Montgomery, Jonathan responded coolly. I wasn't aware that my family arrangements required a neighbor consultation. She smiled thinly. Family, is that what we're calling it? 2 children who appeared literally overnight, with no prior indication you had any interest in parenting. Children who, according to building staff, were living in a subway station before you collected them. Collected, Jonathan's voice hardened. An interesting choice of words for providing shelter to vulnerable children. Call it what you will, she dismissed with a wave of her manicured hand. The fact remains that an unmarried man in your position with your wealth and visibility should be extraordinarily careful about appearances. I'm afraid I don't follow. Don't be obtuse, Mr. Matthews. It doesn't suit you. Her voice lowered. People talk. Questions arise. Why would a bachelor billionaire suddenly take an interest in 2 homeless girls? What could possibly motivate such an unconventional arrangement? The insinuation was unmistakable. Jonathan felt a surge of anger so intense it momentarily clouded his vision. Mrs. Montgomery, he said with dangerous quietness, I'm going. To say this once, the children in my care are there because they needed help, and I was in a position to provide it. Any suggestion of impropriety says far more about the person making such suggestions than it does about me. Now, I suggest you leave before you say something that cannot be unsaid. Her expression hardened. You misunderstand me, Mr. Matthews. I'm not making accusations. I'm warning you about what others are saying. As a concerned neighbor with significant influence in this community, I felt it my duty to alert you to the chatter. How thoughtful, Jonathan replied coldly. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a company to run. After she left, Jonathan remained at his desk, turning over the implications of both confrontations. Richard's power play at the board meeting, Mrs. Montgomery's veiled threats, the tabloid article. None were coincidental. His phone rang. The building's security desk. Mr. Matthews, there's a woman from Child Protective Services here to see you. She says it's regarding Emma and Lily Thompson. Jonathan felt his stomach drop. I'll be right down. The CPS worker, a stern-faced woman named Gloria Warren, insisted on seeing the girls' living arrangements immediately. We received an anonymous report expressing concern about the welfare of 2 minor children in your care, she explained, as they rode the elevator to the penthouse. Anonymous, Jonathan repeated. How convenient. Ms. Warren remained professionally detached as she inspected. The penthouse interviewed Mrs. Chen and spoke privately with both girls. Emma, perceptive as always, watched the proceedings with wary understanding, while Lily chatted animatedly, showing the social worker her artwork and new toys. The girls appear to be well cared for physically, Ms. Warren acknowledged afterward. However, there are serious concerns about the legal status of this arrangement. You have no formal guardianship, no documented relationship to these children. Their mother's whereabouts are unknown, and you have no legal standing to make decisions regarding their welfare. I'm working with authorities to locate their mother, Jonathan explained. In the meantime, they're safe here. Safe is relative, Mr. Matthews, she replied. Children need more than physical safety. They need stability, legal protection, appropriate adult guidance. She paused meaningfully. Typically provided by qualified foster families with proper training and oversight. The implication was clear. Without legal standing, Jonathan could lose the girls at any moment to the very system their mother had apparently feared. What do I need to do to establish temporary guardianship? He asked directly. Ms. Warren seemed surprised by the question. It's a complex process, especially for someone with no prior relationship to the children. You would need to petition the family court, undergo background checks, home studies, psychological evaluations. The process typically takes months, and without the mother's consent, success is not guaranteed. And if I were to pursue adoption? The question emerged before Jonathan had fully processed its implications. Now Ms. Warren looked genuinely astonished. Mr. Matthews, adoption is an even more rigorous process. As a single man with no parenting experience and an extremely demanding career, you would face significant scrutiny. The court always prioritizes the best interests of the children. And you don't believe living with me is in their best interest, Jonathan challenged. That's not for me to determine, she replied diplomatically. But I would be remiss not to point out that your lifestyle and the demands of your position don't typically align with the needs of traumatized children. After she left, promising to return for additional assessments, Jonathan found Emma waiting in the hallway. Are they going to take us away? She asked directly, her composure remarkable for a 7-year-old facing yet another disruption. Jonathan knelt to her level. Not if I can help it, he promised. But I need to make some changes to make sure you and Lily can stay. What kind of changes? Jonathan considered how to explain complex legal procedures to a child. I need to ask a judge for permission to be your guardian, to legally take care of you until we find your mum. Emma processed this information with her characteristic thoughtfulness. And if we don't find her? Then, Jonathan said carefully, I would ask the judge for permission to be your father. Forever. Emma's eyes widened slightly, the most unguarded expression of surprise he had seen from her. You would want that? To be our dad? Yes, Jonathan answered, the certainty in his voice surprising even himself. I would want that very much. Emma studied his face with that penetrating gaze that seemed to see straight through pretense. Even though it's making problems for you, with your company and the newspaper people and the neighbor lady. Jonathan blinked in surprise. You know about all that? She nodded solemnly. I listen, and I'm good at understanding grown-up problems." After a pause, she added, "Lily needs a dad. She doesn't remember our foster homes like I do. She thinks everyone gets to stay together." The simple statement revealed the emotional burden Emma carried, protecting her sister not just physically, but from harsh realities. "And what about you, Emma?" Jonathan asked gently. "What do you need?" For the first time since he had known, Emma's composure cracked slightly. Her lower lip trembled before she controlled it. "I need to know we won't be sent back. To different homes. Separated." "That won't happen," Jonathan vowed, the fierceness of his tone matching the intensity of his resolve. "I promise you, Emma, whatever it takes, you and Lily will stay together, and if I have anything to say about it, you'll both stay with me." That night, after the girls were asleep, Jonathan made 3 decisive phone calls. The first was to the country's most prominent family law attorney, securing her services regardless of cost. The second was to his personal attorney, instructing him to begin preparation of a revised will naming Emma and Lily as his beneficiaries. The third call was to Richard Blackwood. "Richard," he said when the other man answered, "I'm taking a leave of absence, effective immediately." "You can't be serious," Richard sputtered. "The Singapore merger." "We'll proceed under your interim leadership," Jonathan interrupted. "I have more important matters to attend to. The board will receive formal notification in the morning." After ending the call, Jonathan stood at the window of his penthouse, looking out at the city lights. For 20 years, Ecosphere had been his identity, his purpose, his life. Now, for the first time, he had found something more valuable than corporate success. Across the city, Richard Blackwood placed his phone carefully on his desk, a slow smile spreading across his features. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. The anonymous tip to Child Protective Services, the planted tabloid story, the strategic pressure at the board meeting. And now Jonathan Matthews, his longtime rival, had voluntarily stepped aside. "Perfect," Richard murmured to himself, reaching for his phone to call Mrs. Montgomery and thank her for her assistance in this delicate matter. Jonathan's leave of absence from Ecosphere sent shockwaves through the corporate world. Business publications speculated wildly about the reasons behind the tech billionaire's sudden departure. Stock prices fluctuated nervously before stabilizing under Richard Blackwood's interim leadership. Industry insiders whispered about health problems, strategic disagreements, or a possible corporate takeover. None guessed the truth, that Jonathan Matthews, the man whose single-minded drive had built a green energy empire, had set it all aside for 2 7-year-old girls. "Mr. Jonathan," Lily called, racing into his home office where he was reviewing documents from his family law attorney. "Look what I made in art class." She proudly displayed a watercolor painting of 3 stick figures standing before what appeared to be the Manhattan skyline, their hands linked in a chain. "It's beautiful, Lily," he said sincerely, taking the painting. "Is this us?" She nodded, enthusiastically. "You, me, and Emma. Miss Olivia taught me how to make the buildings look shiny." As Lily chattered about her art lesson, Jonathan marveled at the transformation in her. The frightened child from the subway bench now bubbled with confidence and joy. Her nightmares had decreased in frequency, though they hadn't disappeared entirely. She had gained weight, her formerly hollow cheeks now rounded with health. Her golden hair, once dull and tangled, now shone with vitality. Emma's changes were more subtle but equally significant. Her vigilance had softened slightly. She still watched over Lily with protective intensity, but she had begun to allow Jonathan to share some of that responsibility. Her smiles, once rare and guarded, came more frequently now. She had developed a passion for chess, routinely challenging Jonathan to matches that became increasingly competitive as her skills developed. The family court hearing for temporary guardianship was scheduled for the following week. Jonathan's attorney, Catherine Lawson, had warned him that the process would be challenging. "The judge will have serious questions," she cautioned during their last meeting, "about your motives, your fitness as a guardian, your understanding of the girl's needs. Without the mother's explicit consent, we're facing an uphill battle." "I understand," Jonathan had replied, But these girls need stability. They need to... No, they're not going back into the system. Catherine's expression had softened slightly. May I speak frankly, Mr. Matthews? Please. I've represented many wealthy individuals seeking unusual custody arrangements. Most have ulterior motives, public image enhancement, leverage in other legal matters, even tax benefits. She studied his face. You seem different. You genuinely care about these children. I do, Jonathan acknowledged simply. Then show. That to the judge, she advised. Courts are accustomed to seeing powerful people use their influence to get what they want. Show them that what you want is what's best for Emma and Lily. Now, reviewing the meticulous documentation Catherine had prepared, character references, financial disclosures, home study reports, educational plans, Jonathan felt both prepared and utterly terrified. He had navigated billion-dollar negotiations with less anxiety than he felt about this family court hearing. Mr. Matthews? Mrs. Chen interrupted his thoughts. Ms. Warren from Child Protective Services is here for her follow-up visit. Gloria Warren's second assessment was as thorough as her first, but her demeanor had shifted subtly. She noted the educational programs Jonathan had arranged, the psychological support services available to the girls, the stable routine that had been established. She spent time observing the interactions between Jonathan and the twins, her expression thoughtful. You've made considerable changes in a short time, she acknowledged afterward. The girls appear to be thriving in your care. Thank you, Jonathan replied cautiously, sensing there was more coming. However, she continued, confirming his suspicion, there are still significant concerns. Your sudden leave of absence from your company, while allowing more time with the girls, raises questions about stability. And there's the matter of your complete lack of parenting experience. I'm learning, Jonathan said simply. Every day, Ms. Warren's professional mask slipped slightly, revealing a hint of sympathy. Mr. Matthews, I don't doubt your sincerity, but the family court considers many factors in determining placement. A single male with no prior relationship to the children, no parenting experience, and a high-pressure career will face substantial scrutiny, regardless of financial resources. What are you suggesting? Jonathan asked directly. I'm suggesting that you prepare yourself for the possibility that the court may determine the girls would be better served in a traditional foster placement, preferably with an experienced couple accustomed to handling children with trauma backgrounds. The words hit Jonathan with physical force. They would be separated, he stated flatly. Ms. Warren's silence confirmed his fear. That can't happen, he said, his voice low but intense. Emma has devoted her entire young life to protecting Lily. Separating them would cause irreparable harm. I understand your concern, Ms. Warren replied, but my responsibility is to consider all aspects of the children's welfare. After she left, Jonathan found Emma waiting in the hallway, a habit she had developed whenever official visitors came to the penthouse. She doesn't think we should stay with you, Emma stated matter-of-factly. Jonathan hesitated, torn between protecting her from adult concerns and respecting her perceptiveness. She has some concerns, he acknowledged carefully. Emma nodded, unsurprised. Because you're not married. Mrs. Chen said that's why some people think it's strange for us to live here. That's part of it, Jonathan admitted. The system usually prefers to place children with married couples. Emma considered this information with her characteristic thoughtfulness. If you were married, would they let us stay? The question caught Jonathan off guard. Say it might help, but it's more complicated than that. You could marry someone, Emma suggested pragmatically, like in movies when people get married so they can stay in the country. Despite the seriousness of the situation, Jonathan felt a smile tug at his lips. That's not quite how it works in real life, Emma. Marriage is a big commitment. Bigger than adopting 2 kids, she challenged with impeccable logic. Before Jonathan could formulate a response, his phone rang, Edwards calling with an urgent update. We found her, the investigator said without preamble. Sarah Thompson, she's alive. Jonathan felt the world tilt momentarily. Where is she? A rehabilitation facility in New Jersey. She checked herself in voluntarily 3 weeks ago, using a different name. One of my contacts recognized her from the photo we've been circulating. Does she know we're looking for her? About the girls? Not yet, Edwards replied. The facility has strict privacy protocols. I can't approach her directly without authorization. Get me a meeting, Jonathan instructed, as soon as possible. The rehabilitation center was a modest facility located in a converted Victorian house in suburban New Jersey. Jonathan sat alone in a small meeting room, his usual confidence, deserting him as he waited to meet the woman whose absence had changed his life so profoundly. When Sarah Thompson entered, he was struck by how young she looked, barely into her 20s with the same golden hair as her daughters, though cut short and showing dark roots. Her face carried the lingering shadows of her struggles, but her eyes were clear and alert. She wore simple jeans and a facility-issued sweatshirt that hung loosely on her thin frame. "You're the man who has my daughters," she said, without preamble, her voice steady but strained. Jonathan nodded. "They've been staying with me since you left them at Grand Central." Sarah closed her eyes briefly, pain washing across her features. "I never meant to leave them, not permanently." She opened her eyes, meeting his gaze directly. "I had an overdose the night before. I thought I was okay, but I wasn't thinking clearly. I told them to wait while I got food, but then everything got confusing. I ended up back at the dealer's apartment then. I don't remember much after that." "You've been here for 3 weeks, Jonathan observed, careful to keep accusation from his tone. "Why didn't you contact authorities about the girls?" Shame clouded her expression. "I was scared, ashamed, and part of me thought they might be better off if I didn't come back." Her voice broke slightly. "I've been trying so hard to stay clean for them. 3 years, then one mistake and—" She gestured helplessly. "They miss you," Jonathan said simply. "They've been waiting for you to return." Sarah's composure cracked, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Are they okay? Really okay?" "They're safe, healthy and together," he assured her. "Emma's been taking care of Lily just as she always does." A mix of pride and sorrow crossed Sarah's face. "Emma's always been the strong one, too strong for a 7-year-old, taking care of everyone else." "She's an extraordinary child," Jonathan agreed. "Both of them are." Sarah studied him with sudden intensity. "Why are you doing this, taking care of my kids? You're obviously wealthy, successful. What do you want from them?" The question echoed the suspicions that had been directed at him for weeks, but from Sarah it carried different weight, the legitimate concern of a mother, however flawed. "I grew up in foster care," Jonathan explained simply. "Different homes, different families, never belonging anywhere. When I saw Emma and Lily alone in that station, I couldn't walk away." Sarah's gaze remained skeptical, but softened slightly. "And now? What happens now that you've found me?" It was the question Jonathan had been avoiding since receiving Edward's call. In the weeks since the girls had entered his life, he had developed a deep attachment to them. The thought of them leaving created a physical ache in his chest. Yet facing their mother, young, struggling, but clearly loving her daughters, complicated the narrative he had begun to construct. "That depends," he answered carefully, "on what you want, and what's best for Emma and Lily." "What I want is to be a good mother," Sarah said with sudden fierceness, "to give them stability, safety, everything I didn't have growing up. But wanting isn't enough, is it? I can barely support myself. I have no home to offer them, no job waiting for me when I leave here." Her shoulders slumped. "I love my daughters more than anything in this world, but love isn't always enough." "It can be," Jonathan heard himself say, "with the right support." Sarah looked up, confusion evident in her expression. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Jonathan continued, the idea forming as he spoke, "that there might be a way for Emma and Lily to have both of us in their lives. A way for you to recover fully, build a stable life while maintaining your relationship with them." "You're talking about shared custody?" Sarah asked cautiously. "I'm talking about options," Jonathan clarified. "Legal guardianship while you recover. Financial support for education, housing, whatever you need to get back on your feet. A gradual transition. that prioritizes the girl's stability. Sarah's expression registered disbelief. Why would you do that? You don't even know me. I know. Your daughters, Jonathan replied simply, and they need their mother, a healthy, stable mother who can be there for them long term. Tears welled in Sarah's eyes again. I never thought, when I checked in here, I was sure I'd lost them forever, that they'd be in the system, separated, hating me for abandoning them. They don't hate you, Jonathan assured her. They've been waiting for you to come back. 2 days later, Jonathan sat Emma and Lily down in the living room, his heart pounding with anticipation and anxiety. I have some important news, he began carefully. It's about your mum. Lily's eyes widened immediately. Did you find her? Is she coming to get us? Emma remained silent, her expression guarded, hands clasped tightly in her lap. We did find her, Jonathan confirmed. She's been in a hospital getting help for some health problems. That's why she couldn't come back to you at the station. She's sick, Lily asked, her voice small. She was, Jonathan explained gently. But she's getting better. And she misses you both very much. When can we see her? Lily pressed, bouncing slightly with excitement. Jonathan glanced at Emma, who still hadn't spoken. Tomorrow, if you'd like. She's looking forward to seeing you. Emma? He prompted gently, concerned by her silence. Are you okay with this? Emma finally looked up, her eyes reflecting a complexity of emotions far beyond her years. Is she really better? Or will she leave again? The question contained all of Emma's fear, all her protective instinct for Lily, all her premature understanding of adult fallibility. She's working very hard to get better, Jonathan answered truthfully, and she wants to make sure you and Lily are taken care of no matter what. Are we going back to living with her? Emma asked directly. Not right away, Jonathan explained. Your mom needs more time to recover completely and find a stable place for you all to live. In the meantime, we've discussed an arrangement where you would continue living here with me, but you would see your mom regularly. Like divorced parents? Emma clarified, her understanding of adult relationships clearly informed by observations rather than experience. Something like that, Jonathan acknowledged. The most important thing is that you and Lily will stay together, and you'll both have your mom in your lives again. Emma nodded slowly, processing this information. And you, will we still see you too? The question pierced Jonathan's heart with unexpected force. Yes, he promised. I'll still be part of your lives if you want me to be. I want you to be, Lily declared immediately, climbing into his lap with the easy affection she had developed toward him. Emma's response was more measured but equally meaningful. I think that would be good, she said quietly, for all of us. The meeting between Sarah and her daughters the next day was emotionally charged. Lily flew into her mother's arms with immediate forgiveness, while Emma approached more cautiously, studying her mother's face as if looking for evidence of change. Sarah held both girls tightly, tears streaming down her face as she apologized repeatedly, promising to do better. Jonathan watched from a respectful distance, his own emotions, complex and contradictory. Joy at seeing the girls reunited with their mother, concern about Sarah's ongoing recovery, and beneath it all, a selfish fear of losing the connection he had formed with Emma and Lily. Later, after the girls had gone with Mrs. Chen to get ice cream, giving the adults time to talk, Sarah turned to Jonathan with newfound determination. I'm going to prove myself, she stated firmly. To them and to you, I'm going to be the mother they deserve. I believe you will, Jonathan replied sincerely. And your offer, about helping us. Is it real? Sarah asked, vulnerability evident in her question. No hidden conditions? No. Conditions, Jonathan confirmed. Just one request that we work together to give Emma and Lily the stability they need. Sarah studied him for a long moment. You really care about them, don't you? It's not just some rich guy's charity project. They changed my life, Jonathan admitted simply, in ways I'm still discovering. As Sarah prepared to leave, she paused at the door. The family court hearing is still next week, isn't it? For temporary guardianship. Jonathan nodded. We can postpone it, now that you're here, or approach it differently. with your involvement. Sarah shook her head. No, I think it should proceed. Until I'm truly stable. Employment, housing, at least a year of sobriety. They're better off with you as their legal guardian. She swallowed hard. If you're still willing. I am, Jonathan assured her. Then I'll be there, Sarah promised, to tell the judge myself that this is what I want for my daughters, for now. After she left, Jonathan stood at the window, watching the city lights emerge as dusk fell. The path ahead was uncertain, complex in ways he hadn't anticipated. Shared. Guardianship with a recovering addict. Ongoing involvement with family court. The inevitable questions about his relationship with Sarah, with the girls, with his company. Yet for the first time in his adult life, Jonathan Matthews faced uncertainty without fear. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would be navigated with a new purpose, not the relentless drive for success that had defined his earlier years, but something deeper, more meaningful. His phone rang, Richard Blackwood again, undoubtedly with another crisis requiring the CEO's attention. For the third time that day, Jonathan let it go to voicemail. Some things he had finally learned were simply more important. The courtroom felt impossibly formal to Emma as she sat beside Lily on a polished wooden bench, both girls in new dresses. Jonathan had purchased for the occasion. Her legs dangled above the floor, too short to reach. The judge's bench loomed high above, like a mountain peak shrouded in authority. Emma had been in courtrooms before, twice when their mother was fighting to regain custody, once when a foster placement went wrong. Those experiences had taught her to fear these spaces, to associate their wood-paneled solemnity with separation and loss, yet today felt different. She glanced to her left, where Jonathan sat in a perfectly tailored suit, his expression calm but his right foot tapping nervously against the floor, a human gesture that reassured her. To her right sat her mother, looking healthier than Emma had seen her in months, her hair neatly styled, wearing a borrowed blouse and skirt that fit her too loosely but still looked proper. All rise, the bailiff announced as Judge Eleanor Simmons entered the courtroom. Judge Simmons was a stern-looking African-American woman in her 60s, with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a tight bun and reading glasses perched on the end of her nose. Her reputation for protecting children's interests was legendary within the family court system. Be seated, she instructed, her voice carrying natural authority. We're here regarding the matter of temporary guardianship for Emma and Lily Thompson, minor children currently in the informal care of Jonathan Matthews. The proceedings began with statements from the attorneys, Catherine Lawson representing Jonathan, a court-appointed lawyer representing the children's interests, and another representing Sarah, who couldn't afford private counsel but had been assigned a dedicated public defender. Ms. Warren from Child Protective Services presented her assessment, highlighting both the exceptional material conditions Jonathan provided and her lingering concerns about his suitability as a single, male guardian. The court-appointed psychologist who had interviewed the girls testified about their strong attachment to both their mother and, surprisingly quickly, to Jonathan. Throughout the presentations, Emma remained hyper-aware of her surroundings, absorbing every word with the heightened sensitivity of a child who had learned that adult decisions determined her fate. Beside her, Lily fidgeted occasionally, but remained unusually quiet, sensing the gravity of the moment. I'd like to hear from Ms. Thompson, Judge Simmons announced, peering over her glasses at Sarah. Please approach the stand. Sarah was sworn in, her voice steady despite her obvious nervousness. The judge asked direct questions about her history, her addiction, her recovery plans, and, most pointedly, her decision to support Jonathan's guardianship petition. Why? Not simply resume custody of your daughters yourself? Judge Simmons asked. You are their mother, after all. Sarah took a deep breath. Because I love them enough to recognize I'm not ready yet, she answered with raw honesty. I've put them through too much instability already. Right now they need the security Mr. Matthews can provide, while I focus on staying sober and rebuilding my life. And how do you envision your ongoing relationship with your daughters during this period? Mr. Matthews has been incredibly generous, Sarah explained. He's arranged for me to visit regularly, to be part of their daily lives as much as possible, while I complete my recovery program. We've discussed a transition plan where my involvement would increase as I demonstrate stability. Judge Simmons nodded thoughtfully. A rather unusual arrangement between two people who were strangers mere weeks ago. Some might question the motivations involved. Sarah's expression hardened slightly. With all due respect, Your Honor, my daughters aren't a bargaining chip or a charity case. Mr. Matthews could have simply reported them to authorities when he found them abandoned. Instead, he's gone above and beyond to keep them together, to respect their bond with me, and to create a solution that puts their needs first. After Sarah stepped down, Jonathan was called to testify. Emma watched as he answered questions about his background, his company, his lack of parenting experience, and his sudden desire to become guardian to two young girls. His answers were thoughtful and direct, without the defensive tone Emma had observed in other adults facing court scrutiny. Mr. Matthews, Judge Simmons said finally, you've built an extraordinary career focused entirely on professional achievement. Nothing in your history suggests interest in family life or child-rearing. Why should this court believe your sudden transformation is genuine and lasting? Jonathan was quiet for a moment, considering the question. Your Honor, until I met Emma and Lily, I believe success could be measured in financial statements and market valuations. I've since learned that true wealth has nothing to do with money. He glanced at the girls, his expression softening. I can't explain exactly how or why these children changed my perspective so completely. I can only tell you that they did, and that I am committed to their well-being for as long as they need me. Judge Simmons studied him carefully. And what about your company? Ecosphere is a multi-billion-dollar enterprise that has presumably required your full attention until now. How do you reconcile those demands with the needs of two young children? I've taken a leave of absence to focus on this transition, Jonathan explained. When I return, it will be with a significantly reduced schedule and enhanced delegation of responsibilities. My priority has shifted. A substantial professional sacrifice, the judge observed. Jonathan shook his head. Not compared to what I've gained. After both adults had testified, Judge Simmons surprised everyone by requesting to speak privately with Emma and Lily in her chambers. As they were led into the judge's office, Emma gripped Lily's hand tightly, preparing to be their spokesperson, as she had been so many times before. Judge Simmons's demeanor softened noticeably once they were seated in the comfortable chairs across from her desk. She removed her glasses and smiled gently. I just want to have a little chat with you two, she explained. You're not in any trouble, and there are no wrong answers. I just need to understand how you feel about everything that's happening. Lily unexpectedly spoke first. Are you going to decide if we can stay with Mr. Jonathan while Mom gets better? That's right, the judge confirmed. What do you think about that idea? I like it, Lily stated simply. Mr. Jonathan makes really good pancakes, and he never yells, even when I spilled juice on his computer. And Mom visits a lot now. She's getting better. Judge Simmons smiled at Lily's straightforward assessment before turning to Emma. And what about you, Emma? You've been very quiet. Emma measured her words carefully, aware of their importance. Mr. Jonathan keeps his promises, she said finally. He said we would stay together, and we have. He said Mom could still be our mom, and she is. Do you feel safe with him? The judge asked gently. Emma nodded. He makes sure we have everything we need. And, she hesitated, then continued with the emotional honesty that children can sometimes access more easily than adults. He looks at us like we matter. Like we're important, not just because we're kids who need help, but because we're us. Judge Simmons's expression softened further. That's a very wise observation, Emma. We've been in foster homes before, Emma continued, her voice taking on the protective edge Jonathan had come to recognize. Sometimes together, sometimes not. It wasn't like this. Like what? The judge prompted. Like family, Emma answered simply. An hour later, Judge Simmons delivered her ruling. The courtroom fell silent as she adjusted her glasses and reviewed her notes one final time. "Family court cases are rarely straightforward," she began. "Each situation brings unique circumstances, competing interests, and complex emotional dynamics. Our priority must always be the well-being of the children involved." She looked directly at Emma and Lily. "In this case, we have two exceptional young ladies who have demonstrated remarkable resilience in the face of significant challenges. They deserve stability, security, and the opportunity to maintain bonds with those who love them." Turning to Sarah, she continued, "Ms. Thompson, the court acknowledges your courage in recognizing your current limitations as a parent and prioritizing your children's immediate needs over your natural desire to have them with you. Your commitment to recovery is commendable." Sarah nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "Mr. Matthews," the judge continued, "your intervention in these children's lives has been unconventional but demonstrably beneficial. The court is satisfied that your commitment to their welfare is genuine and that you have the resources, both material and emotional, to provide appropriate care." Emma felt her heart beating faster as the judge prepared to announce her decision. "Therefore, it is the ruling of this court that temporary guardianship of Emma and Lily Thompson be granted to Jonathan Matthews for a period of 1 year with regular review. This arrangement will include structured visitation rights for Sarah Thompson, increasing in frequency and duration as she progresses in her recovery program." The judge paused, then added, "Additionally, the court approves the proposed support plan for Ms. Thompson's rehabilitation and eventual transition to independent living. This holistic approach to family preservation is precisely what our system should encourage." Relief washed over Emma in a physical wave. Beside her, Lily squeezed her hand excitedly. Jonathan's expression remained composed, but Emma caught the slight tremor in his hands as he clasped them together. "One final note," Judge Simmons concluded. "It is rare in family court to witness such selfless cooperation between parties. The willingness of both Mr. Matthews and Ms. Thompson to put aside ego and focus entirely on these children's needs is commendable. I encourage you all to maintain this spirit of collaboration as you move forward." Outside the courthouse, standing in the bright summer sunshine, the peculiar new family unit absorbed the reality of the judge's decision. Sarah hugged her daughters tightly, whispering promises to continue her recovery work. Jonathan stood slightly apart, giving them space for this moment. "Ice cream?" he suggested when they finally separated. "I think a celebration is in order." Later that evening, after Sarah had returned to her rehabilitation facility with plans to visit again in 3 days, Jonathan found Emma sitting alone on the penthouse balcony, watching the sunset paint the Manhattan skyline in shades of gold and rose. "May I join you?" he asked, respecting the contemplative mood she projected. Emma nodded, scooting over to make room on the bench. They sat in comfortable silence for several minutes, the city spread before them like an intricate tapestry of lives and stories. "Are you happy with the judge's decision?" Jonathan finally asked. Emma considered the question with her characteristic thoughtfulness. "Yes," she said simply. Then, after a pause, "Are you?" "Very much so," Jonathan confirmed, "though I know this is just the beginning of a long journey." "For all of us," Emma agreed, her maturity still startling at times. "Emma," Jonathan began carefully, "I want you to know something important. No matter what happens, whether your mom completes her recovery quickly or needs more time, whether the guardianship becomes permanent or temporary, I will always be part of your life. If you want me to be." Emma turned to look at him directly, her eyes reflecting wisdom beyond her years. "I think we need you," she said, "and I think maybe you need us too." The simple observation, so accurate in its childlike directness, caught Jonathan off guard. He had spent his adult life believing he needed nothing and no one, that independence was strength and attachment was vulnerability. Yet this 7-year-old had seen straight through to a truth he was only beginning to acknowledge himself. "You're right," he admitted. "I do need you, both of you. You've shown me what really matters." Emma's smile, a full, unguarded expression that transformed her serious face, was rare enough to feel like a gift. She leaned against Jonathan's side, a gesture of trust that meant more than any corporate achievement ever had. Inside, Lily called for them, excited about something she had discovered on television. As they rose to join her, Emma paused at the balcony door. And Mr. Jonathan? Yes, Emma. Do you think someday, maybe, I could call you Dad? The question was hesitant, vulnerable in a way Emma rarely allowed herself to be. Jonathan felt his throat tighten with emotion. I would like that very much, he managed. Whenever you're ready. Not yet, she clarified quickly, but maybe someday when it feels right. Whenever it feels right, he agreed. 6 months later, Jonathan stood in his office at Ecosphere headquarters, adjusting to his new part-time schedule. After his leave of absence, he had returned not as CEO but as executive chairman, a position that allowed him to guide the company's vision while delegating day-to-day operations to his executive team. Richard Blackwood had been diplomatically sidelined after board members discovered his role in attempting to undermine Jonathan's leadership. The office had changed, much like his penthouse. Family photos now adorned his desk, Emma and Lily at Central Park, the girls with Sarah during a weekend visit, all 4 of them at the Thanksgiving dinner Jonathan had hosted. A carefully framed children's drawing hung prominently on the wall, where client awards had once dominated. His assistant interrupted his thoughts with a message. The girls' school called. Lily won the first-grade art contest and wants you to come to the ceremony this afternoon. Clear my schedule, Jonathan instructed immediately. This takes priority. As he gathered his things to leave, he paused at the window overlooking Manhattan. Somewhere in that vast cityscape was the Grand Central bench where this journey had begun, where 2 abandoned children and a lonely billionaire had inadvertently changed each other's lives forever. His phone rang, Sarah calling with excitement about a job interview that had gone well. Her recovery was progressing steadily, her relationship with her daughters strengthening through consistent visitation and involvement in their daily lives. The transition plan was working better than anyone had anticipated, with all parties focused on the girls' well-being above all else. That evening, after the school ceremony where Lily had proudly accepted her art award, the 4 of them walked through Central Park together. Sarah and Lily raced ahead to the duck pond, leaving Jonathan and Emma walking side by side in comfortable silence. Mr. Jonathan, Emma said suddenly, her voice tentative. Yes, Emma. She hesitated, then took a deep breath. I've been thinking about what I asked you, about calling you Dad. Jonathan's heart quickened, and I think I'm ready now, she said softly, if that's still okay. Jonathan knelt to meet her eyes, his own vision blurring slightly. Nothing would make me happier. Emma smiled, that full, unguarded smile that had become more frequent in recent months. Okay, Dad. The word hung in the air between them, simple yet profound in its implications. Not replacing her mother, but adding another layer of security and love to a child who had known too little of either. As they continued walking, Emma's small hand slipped naturally into his larger one, a gesture that contained within it all the trust, connection, and belonging